probably from my parents or something. But I couldn't believe it. Everybody, I just kept singing, and within a few seconds, everybody started dancing. And you know, here's this 11-year-old kid thinking, wow, look at these people. You don't want to know how much money I made that day, okay? I mean,
wow.
I mean, those were the experiences I had that pretty much set the path of what I was going to do later on in life. And
well, that is so cool. And I got to say, I think we got an exclusive here, Wild Man, on Classic Christian Rock Podcast, that the world now will know that Jimmy Rogers and Buck Owens are at the root of Stryper. So I don't think anybody could have possibly...
Well, I'm only one guy in the band. It's not... I can't speak for the other guys. There were plenty of influences with everybody else in the band. There's so many. I mean, Elvis was a big one for the Sweets.
Oh, sure.
Right.
Yeah, they've
I mean, there's so many things. It's great to see how God puts together a bunch of guys that had so many different diverse influences, and then it turns into what it is.
Yeah,
that's the kind of cool thing,
Right.
Yeah.
So
you've got such a rich voice. Just even listening to your speaking voice, you've got this rich, nice baritone voice. Did you ever sing like in high school in choir or anything like that?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I of course in elementary school, it starts back then. Every teacher always had some kind of a singing thing that they would do, and this one teacher actually was, because they do these Christmas presentations for the parents to come hear you sing or whatever. I'll never forget, this teacher was trying to get a couple of sections of singers to sing like echoing lines. So there would be like a song, a main song, and then it would go da 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 da. Then somebody would have to go da 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 da, and then there would be a harmony section that would sing in harmony, right? Well, this teacher didn't know where to put. Whenever there was a section that was not like on key very well, she would stick me in that section so that they would be in key, because I was like the anchor,
Cool.
Wow.
When I was, third and fourth grade, it's just crazy stuff. I used to attend whatever music courses were available in elementary school. I would try to get in on it, just whatever. And then when I got into high school, I got into this thing called the vocal jazz ensemble. And they called them the Titan Tones, because it was Pioneer High School. The Pioneer High School Titans were the name of the football team. They just called us the Titan Tones. And it was a group of 16 people that were grouped into 4 sections. Alto, soprano were the girls, and then tenor and bass baritone were the guys. So I sang in the bass baritones section. And we would do some pretty intense vocal jazz type stuff. I mean, we're talking like Manhattan Transfer type stuff, okay? Which was really pretty cool.
Yeah. Wow.
And I mean, those were things that I explored and really got a lot of enjoyment out of, and eventually was like trying to write music at that time in high school. I would write music just to impress the girls, or try to write these like love songs and stuff and whatnot. And high school was great. I used to walk up and down the halls in high school singing, and people thought I was pretty weird, But then what would happen was I would get together with other musicians in that were from school or from around the area, around the same age as me, and we would do these backyard jams or whatever, and people would show up, and that was kind of fun too. And I'd sing or play or whatever was whatever I was open to doing, and so that was going on,
Now were you into any of the rock scene back then in terms of just your own listening and enjoyment?
Oh yeah, no. When I got into high school, I was already kind of listening to a lot of rock music. I mean, of course, I loved the Beatles. I loved Paul McCartney and Wings were out at the time, so that was a big. I loved Paul McCartney, genius, this genius writer, and I mean, I was really into like Chicago. It's like another band I loved. I was into oh my gosh, I'm trying to think of all the different bands. And my uncles, my mom's side of the family, I'm going towards. They were playing in bands and stuff, and they were listening to like Cream and Hendrix and Deep Purple, Three Dog Night, all that stuff. So that was a whole other thing that I was listening to rock-wise. But then when I got into high school, people were listening to Bad Company, Kiss, and all those kind of groups from the 70s. And it was when one day, because they used to have a guy that would play music on a loudspeaker in the quad, the outdoor quad where everyone ate lunch. And one time at lunch, all of a sudden I heard this music. I was just blown away by how it sounded, and it was like so powerful sounding, and I just had to know who it was. And I ran into the room where the guy was playing the music. I said, "What is that?" And he goes, "It's Black Sabbath. It's this song called Iron Man." And I went out as soon as I could gather up some change and went out and bought an album called "We Sold Our Souls for Rock and Roll," and I went through that album. I played the grooves off of that. I wore them out. Sabbath became probably the biggest thing in my life at that time.
Wow.
And we're talking 1976, 77, somewhere on there, early 77, somewhere on there.
Okay.
So, I mean, that's really what kind of hurled me into that whole, okay, I'm going to go down this path. To me, Sabbath blew away anybody. No one could match them. And they were unique. And Tony Iommi had that heavy, distorted sound that, didn't sound like anyone else, as far as I was concerned. And the way he played. And then the riffs he came up with, just unbelievable. And Ozzy's shrieking voice, I was just turned on, guys. It was just, that's all I want to do is play Sabbath. That's kind of what happened with me. There were other guys, there were other friends and stuff. I mean, the Sweets were there in high school. We went to high school together, and they were listening to a lot of other music as well. But I just wanted to play Sabbath. That's all I wanted to do. And I think I recall Robert being a little turned off by that because I didn't want to play anything but Sabbath when we jammed.
Now, was there a time, like you just mentioned, you were in high school together with Sweets, you would jam together with them. Was there a span of time between high school and you being officially with Stryper? Did you play with other bands in between? Tell us about, and just tell us about how you even started with Stryper to begin with.
Well, like I said, I've jammed with so many people during my high school days, and Michael wasn't in the band at the time. Robert was kind of in a few bands, and I used to watch him play. I'd go see him play, and because he was a great drummer, still is. But I mean, back then he was like one of the guys everybody was watching, and everybody knew about him. And so I would go watch him play, and sometimes I'd jam with him if he would invite me over to jam or whatever at their parents' garage. And this was all in Whittier. I lived probably less than a mile away from them at the time, which later on they moved to La Mirada. But at this time it was all kind of in that same area. I knew Robert, and we went to school together, and then eventually when I became a student, Robert graduated before me. My last senior year came around, and Michael started going to school. I'm take that back. Robert was still in high school. I was a junior, and then Michael was a freshman when I was a junior. So 4-year high school. So then when I was a senior, Michael was a sophomore. I remember giving Michael rides home, or actually part of the way home, because I would stop at my dad's upholstery shop to work after school, and they only lived a couple blocks away from that. So they would at least ride with me there and then go the rest of the way home. So we were all like friends, and stuff. And then eventually I was actually trying to start my own band, as some guys would do that, and kind of eager to make that happen. I was with some other guys from school, and we were, making an attempt to put something together. And that never went anywhere, but I was watching how Robert, first thing that happened was Robert got Michael in the band and had him come play, and they started playing these backyard parties around Whittier, and they were bringing in a lot of people. Next thing I knew, those guys were playing in Hollywood and playing at the Troubadour and places like that, the Whiskey and all that. And at that point I was like, wow, these guys are doing really good. And I had parted ways with my band and the guys that I was playing with, and I was hanging out at the local music store, and I ran into Michael. And at that time, Michael's like, hey, what's up, man? And I'm like, hey, how's it going? He goes, how's your band going? I'm like, we're not playing together anymore. He goes, oh, really? He looked at me and goes, hey, would you be interested in being in our band? And I was thinking about it. I'm like, wow, really? I thought Robert didn't like my Black Sabbath tint. And he was like, but I didn't care at that point. I was playing anything. It didn't matter at that. But at that point, I was like really into Van Halen, and I had copped a whole bunch of Van Halen songs, really learned them note for note, and was getting a little recognition in town for that. And then he was like, no, I'll talk to Rob. Don't worry about that. So sure enough, I went down and we had a meeting, and they started working with me, and I started learning some of the songs that Michael was writing, which at the time, one of the ones that was very prominent and very popular with their fans was My Love Will Always Show, the hard version of My Love Will Always Show. And Loud and Clear was another one.
Oh, yeah. So
those songs, I sat down, and Mike just sat down and showed me the harmony parts to the riffs, and we sat down and worked on it for a minute. And next thing you know, we had a rehearsal, and we pulled them off, and they sounded great. And I think, Robert finally just was like, okay, let's do this. You're in the band. Well, when they had me come in the band, the bass player that was at the time in the band was very mad, angry, because he didn't want to lose the guitar player that they had before me. He was friends with the guy, and I guess he got ticked off about it and said he didn't want to play with me. Well, they said, okay, you're out. And they threw all his stuff out on the driveway.
Wow.
And I'm just like, okay, that was kind of mean. I guess I hope I don't piss these guys off. I might end up with my stuff on the driveway.
What's amazing is if that would happen today with social media, everybody would be seeing it right now. Everybody.
Yeah, well, I just think it's funny, and it's cool, think that they thought that much of me, that they wanted to keep me in the band. They would let that guy go.
Yeah. Wow.
So that was, it was an honor in my opinion. It was really nice of them. So, after that, it was just, we kept going. We kept looking for a bass player, and went through a few guys, and eventually, ended up with Tim Gaines as our first bass player. Mm-hmm. So, as Stryper, I should say.
Yeah.
And that's how it started.
You mentioned earlier about just, how God brings things together, brings people together. First off, I just got to say, how cool is that you guys knew each other back in the day, back in school, and how many folks are out there now that got their little high school garage